Hey everybody, Matt here with the Most Adequate Collection, and today we're going to be talking a little bit of wrestling, specifically because of one card I got in the mail. Now, I am fairly new to the Tops Now side of the hobby. Just got into it a few months back with the Olympics. Got a couple Team USA Olympic cards from Tops Now. It does a great job of capturing sporting events kind of in the moment, dedicating a card to them. Now, yeah, of course, like anything, they've got certain parallels, certain rarities. They've got an autographed one of one versions with most of them. But it allows you, if you get really excited about a specific event or a game or an accomplishment, to have a piece of cardboard in your collection dedicated to that particular piece. Now, I got the two Olympic ones, and just recently I got my third, which is. Oh, shoot. There we go. Had trouble getting it out of the case, but it would be this one right here. Tops Now of El Grande Americano. Specifically, this card deals with an event that happened just a couple months ago. It was, got it over here, 30th of May. So just a month and a half ago at AAA. AAA is one of, if not the top Mexican wrestling organizations, or lucha libre organizations, as it would be known, dedicated to that style of wrestling. Was recently bought up by WWE, so WWE runs it, but they still kind of dedicate that league or that group to that style. But there's a lot of intermingling between WWE stars, AAA stars. You'll have them on each other's shows every now and then. But this specific event was dedicated around two people. The event was, and it was their pay-per-view, or as they're calling them now, premium live events, because they're not on pay-per-view anymore. They're on the streaming, whatever streaming services they're on. But it was between El Grande Americano and the original El Grande Americano. And this storyline started about a year and a half ago with a wrestler named Chad Gable, who himself is a former Olympian in Greco-Roman wrestling, was a former tag team champion, and has done pretty well, but it was at a spot at the time of where he just kind of wasn't hitting for some reason. I don't know if it was creative didn't have much for him, or it just wasn't connecting with the crowds as well. I mean, I think it had more to do with creative, but he was kind of in limbo a little bit. So in the storyline that started at the time, he was having trouble with luchadors, which were in WWE. Now, luchadors is an individual who practices the art of lucha libre, which has to do with the Mexican style of wrestling. It deals less with like in-ring psychology specifically, less with storytelling, and more with acrobatics, a high, fast-paced action, general excitement. You know, don't sit down, don't blink, or you'll miss something. But there are a few more that are in WWE now than there used to be. We have Penta, we've got Rey Fenix, we've got Dragon Lee, and of course, you know, one of the greatest of all time, Rey Mysterio. And within the storyline, Chad Gable was having trouble with these wrestlers, the masked wrestlers specifically. And so within that, he went down to Mexico to study the art of lucha libre, as in, if you want to know how to defeat an enemy, you study the enemy. And it never acknowledged that that's who it was. But all of a sudden, there appeared this masked luchador named El Grande Americano, who, similar to Chad Gable, was going after these luchadors that Chad Gable had problems with. And it was going okay. Storyline was good. People were kind of getting behind it. But then all of a sudden, Chad Gable had an injury. And then, well, what do? Do you stop the storyline where it is? You have a masked wrestler. And they haven't acknowledged that that's who it was at that time. So instead, they found another wrestler that they weren't doing anything with at the time, which was Ludwig Kaiser, who's a German-born wrestler, was with Gunther as part of Imperium, but then once they split off, they really didn't have anything for Kaiser. So kind of similar to Gable, he was just kind of sitting and catering, waiting for an opportunity, and one came up, and so they continued without a hitch. And if you know anything about these guys, I I guess they have similar skin tone, and that's about where the similarities lie. Kaiser's a lot taller. Gable's more muscular, and they don't even come from the same corner of the globe. But they went on without it, or without a hitch, and continued the storyline. Then at a certain point, this past year's Royal Rumble, all of a sudden you have El Grande Americano in the ring, and then you have the original El Grande Americano, the one played by Chad Gable, making his return from injury. And as the storyline would go on, we had these two versions, essentially, of the same character that were fighting it out. Now, on screen, on TV, they wouldn't acknowledge. They, of course, at this point had to acknowledge that there were two different versions of it, but it's never been acknowledged who was behind the mask in either case. Now, we all knew. It's not a secret. You could see, the similar body types as between original and Gable, and then the new Grande Americano and Ludwig Kaiser. They didn't cover anything up. I think at one point the original even had boots with the CG on it. But we played along with it. And that's kind of where I really think pro wrestling gets to be fun, is that we acknowledge that this is entertainment. We know that they get along backstage. But at the same time, when things are good and when storylines are good, we just like to play along. And if you give us something that's good, we'll be along for the ride. And so we get the original El Grande Americano, who's terrorizing the newer Grande Americano. Now, with Ludwig Kaiser, who is playing the newer El Grande Americano, he starts really ingratiating himself into lucha libre and Mexican culture. He starts dating Andrea Bazarte, who's a backstage interviewer with AAA. He learns the language, becomes fluent in Spanish. And so whereas we started as an antagonist, we now have someone playing the character who's fully embracing the Mexican culture. And they're embracing him back. Now, I don't know if it's all of that, or sometimes it's just that you have a good antagonist to play off of. But it got to where they finally meet in the ring, and tensions are at a boiling point. Gable starts beating up friends of Kaiser's, starts putting former wrestlers on the shelf, and not only that, whenever it finally gets to the boiling point of where the new Grande Americano challenges the original agrees to it under one condition, that AAA General Manager Rey Mysterio fire Andrea Bazarte from her job as a backstage interviewer. So we're just adding incident after incident after incident of where the original is really getting under the skin of the new Grande Americano. And so we get to the boiling point of where we have to meet, and we have to settle it for good. So the stipulation there is mask versus mask. Now, for those who aren't fully ingratiated into wrestling culture, lucha libre culture, the mask that a luchador wears is his entire identity. You not only put on an outfit, you become a character, you become a persona. And not only that, but by this time in their career, they've spent 10, 15, sometimes 20 years putting their life into this character. And the deal is once you lose the mask, you lose everything about that character. Now, in this case, of course, they haven't spent their lives with these characters, but they've done such a good job of telling this story that the fans, the Mexican wrestling fans, are completely all in on this. To where you have, in Monterrey, Mexico, you have an American playing a luchador against a German playing an American playing a luchador, headlining the show, and they sell out 17,000 seats to watch this. And when the match starts, even when they're making the introductions, every single person is on their feet. It's one of the loudest reactions I've ever heard as a wrestling fan. And not just loud by volume, but loud by how many people are into it. You have 17,000 people, and every single one of them is cheering for El Grande Americano, and every single one of them is booing the original. And so you have this fantastic match. And do they do anything different or new? No, they don't. If you knew the storyline, you could have written the match out exactly how it happened. You have a blind comedian that original Grande assaulted, who came back and attacked the original. You have one of the Exoticos who original Grande put on the shelf and injured, make a return, hitting him over the head with a guitar. You have Grande, the new Grande Americano's girlfriend, Andrea Bazzarte, making her return to distract the original. And even though she's apparently banned from the arena because she's been fired, well, she bought a ticket. And so now she's at front row and distracting him. And it was just such a well-told story from the start to the finish, not only in the match, but leading up to it. If you were to watch the show, the whole start to finish, from when they start making their entrances till the very end, was about an hour long, and it does not feel like an hour. I've watched it probably 4 or 5 times since then, and every single time I'm taken in right from the beginning, to the pre-match package, to the entrances where they have full mariachi bands playing them to the ring, to where they do the announcements at the beginning, the match itself. They're both tearing each other's masks. Both of them start bleeding. They do play an injury of where original starts getting an ankle lock on the newer Grande because his finisher is a running headbutt. So if your opponent's finisher requires them to run, the best thing to do to combat that is to take out their legs. And so at the very end, after a couple opportunities or a couple tries of trying that running headbutt and not being able to do it because he couldn't get himself going, wills himself to get just enough energy to launch himself off of the ropes, give that diving headbutt, that running headbutt, and finally getting the 1, 2, 3, or in Mexico, the uno, dos, tres. And at the end of the match, the good guy wins. The original has to unmask. And the cool thing I found out here is there's a ceremony to it. It's not just that, all right, the guy gets pinned, he gets up, takes his mask off, and hands it to him. In this case, Gable, who we are soon to find out, invites his family, his wife and 3 kids, into the ring. And the cool thing here is that Gable has 2 daughters and a son. The son is wearing an El Grande Americano singlet with an El Grande Americano mask. And as Chad Gable starts unmasking himself, his son, who's wearing that mask, wearing a Grande mask, also takes his own mask off, which I thought was kind of a cool touch. But it's not just that. You take your mask off, you say a few words, and then you introduce yourself. So they'll say their real name, where they are from, and their background. They've Chad Gable, born in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and went to the Olympics in Greco-Roman wrestling and have been a professional wrestler for 17 years. And the reason is because it's not just you lose a match and here's the consequences. It's almost kind of retiring the persona. Your character dies at that point, and you go from being either a superhero or a supervillain to just being a man. So that's why they introduce themselves as their real name, is because he's no longer El Grande Americano, he is now Chad Gable. And then he hands the mask to the new El Grande Americano, whereas he says, I will forever be the original El Grande Americano, but now you are the only El Grande Americano. And so that's the image that is on this card here, is the El Grande Americano, the newer one, holding the mask of the original El Grande Americano. And it's just such a great image. It's he's exhausted, but still relishing the victory. And as the back reads, it's not, I mean, wrestling, you don't have stats on the back, but it reads, fans in Monterrey, Mexico witnessed an instant classic between El Grande Americano and the original El Grande Americano. Stealing the show, as any main event should, the two masked superstars traded blows in an effort to reveal the other's identity. Thanks to his grit and a massive headbutt to the midsection, Americano outlasted the original Warrior to reveal that it was Chad Gable all along. Now look, we knew all along it was Chad Gable, and we know who this one is too. And that's the one unique thing here with this one is in both cases, we know who they are. So you're not really revealing somebody. But it was such a captivating story that we were all in. And we played along because it's fun. And at the end of the day, that's what it should be. So this is one of the only instance where after a wrestling event that I went on and bought the Tops Now card. It's also one of the few instances when a match or an event in wrestling got me to do this, which is purchase a shirt. This is a shirt, basically the poster for the show, and bought the shirt. And this is the fourth time that because of something I see on TV, I went out and bought a wrestling shirt immediately. First time CM Punk returns to wrestling in AEW at the time. Well, it's not in order. Another time, Jey Uso returning to Monday Night Raw after leaving the Bloodline. I bought a Cody Rhodes shirt right after that Hell in a Cell when he had a completely torn pec and pulled off his jacket to reveal bruising all over here before going into a Hell in a Cell match. And then the fourth time was this. It was because they did such a great job of putting on a story and sucking me in and everyone else in that I immediately had to get on and support what they did by purchasing a card and purchasing a shirt. And so that's what it is. You know, it's fun. Wrestling's supposed to be fun, and this was absolutely fun from start to finish. And as I've always said, you know, when it's good, wrestling is great, and when wrestling is great, it's a work of art. And if you haven't watched much wrestling or haven't watched wrestling in a while, I would give this a shot. I hadn't really ingratiated myself fully into Lucha Libre. I was very familiar with it. I knew about some of the wrestlers back when WCW had them on Nitro and knew some of them, but they were never really treated as much more than sideshows. I know some of the more modern guys that have been to WWE and AEW, but as far as the full style, I never got into it until now. And so not only am I watching a AAA show, I'm buying AAA merch, and even after that event, I'm continuing to watch the AAA shows on YouTube. So if you're willing to, give it a shot, give it a try. It'll take about an hour of your time, but it doesn't feel like an hour. But that's it. Just kind of wanted to show off a new card I got, show off a new T-shirt, and just kind of talk a little bit about something that I thought was fantastic. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all later.